endless skies. Oh, I'm living that nomad life, city to city, feeling alive. From mountain tops to ocean drives, unchained, I thrive, I thrive.
Uh, Welcome to Nomads 50 Plus. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chris Kalabukas, and coming at you from a little bit of chilly Silicon Valley, California.
And this is Mary Bartnikowski, your CEO of Fun, who wants to help you have a better life, move internationally, and take some chances and live your life fully. And I'm coming
Nice.
to you from Syracuse, Sicily.
Siracusa, right?
Siracusa. You got it
Siracusa.
down, Chris. Nice.
I think part of the knowing Greek, you can pick up some of those other European languages as well, but I'm not 100% sure.
You got it, man.
Great. So I'll be there next year. I'll be there later this year.
Oh, good.
Maybe I'll come see you.
Yeah, I was thinking you guys might want to come back before the year is over.
Oh, we're definitely going to be in Greece. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make it to Italy, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I
Plans are
was
in
thinking,
flux.
well, what do you think, like in the autumn?
Oh, no, no, in May or something like that.
Oh, nice. That's in a couple months. Fantastic.
I
I
know
gotta come back.
we were going to sit down and map it all out yesterday, but life got in the way, and
Yeah.
well, we still haven't done it yet. But you wanted to talk about um, that this life, this amazing life, this super fun life may not be for everyone. Is that true?
Well, it's things that no one will tell you. I've been noticing online people talking about, oh, it's so easy, do this. Well, it's really not easy and fast.
So you're starting to put like a damper on things now. Are we already starting to put a damper on things? We're episode
N-
4 and we're already
Well,
going, okay, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. No, I'm kidding.
it's not so much a damper
Okay.
as more a reality check.
Yeah. Make sure you know
Because,
what you're getting yourself into, right?
and you can't really know until you do it. However, there's a lot of things for you to think about before, and you're still going to want to do that research trip, of course.
Well,
And
we'll
you're
talk
going to
about
want
that in a future show, but it's kind of like what we were, this is a sort of an extension of last week's, because last week we were talking about things that you need to do before you go, and here are more things that you need to think about before you go, right?
yes, there's thinking and do like I'm seeing a lot of online. How long will it take me to leave the country? Like it's like, oh, I'm going to
Let me
leave
see. I
tomorrow.
drive to the airport, I buy a ticket. Sorry.
No, that's not going to be. And a lot of people have asked that on social media. Like they
Isn't
really
that
think
isn't
it's
that
going
how
to.
things work now? You could just drive to the airport, leave your car, jump on a plane, and go, right?
Well, maybe if you're going on vacation, but not if you're going for an extended time.
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, so
y-
that's actually an interesting question. So
okay.
a lot of people have gone on vacation, so they understand what needs to be done when they go on vacation. What do you have to do
hmm
differently if you're planning on this kind of trip?
Okay. It's a whole different deal. So, the first thing is where you're going to stay once you decide, okay, this is the country and I have to get housing, which is not that easy
Hmm.
to do. Um, And I want to make this point. If you've got plenty of money and you could kind of just take chances on sort of that mid level, you're still going to overpay.
Hmm.
But the thing is, you can end up spending less money if you do more research and really read all those reviews. And maybe if you can even get a recommendation, that would be great too. Because now I'm staying in more places where I've stayed before because I know they're good and the Wi-Fi works and I can do a Zoom call and all that. But
Yeah.
when you're just starting out green, you don't have that. Um,
But
and
maybe the
and
way to do it
things
is because if you're typically on vacation, people spend a lot of money, right? They go to the
right.
high end places. But then when you're doing it as a lifestyle, you want to be at the sort of the lower end. But when you're first starting out, maybe the best idea would be to be somewhere in the middle.
Right. And see, when I tell people, I'm still paying more than what somebody that's living here full time is paying, of course,
Right.
but I'm getting a pretty good deal because maybe on one of those expensive trips, you want to talk to people, go to some expat groups. I mean, if you're going to do that ahead and ask people where to stay because they're going to
Hmm.
know because their
Right.
families come and friends. So you got to think about the housing. That's probably the very first thing that you're going to be dealing with. And then you got to think about all the stuff that you're not. Are you going to be able to do your business? Are you going to be able to be on Zoom? Are you going to have Wi-Fi that actually works, not that they told you it works and it
That
doesn't?
that happens more often than not, right? I bet.
It happens a lot. And so, if you're setting up a call with someone on the other side of the world, I mean, that's why every time we do this and it works, I'm just ecstatic.
I know, I'm flabbergasted. I'm like, wow, technology actually worked out for once. But that's
Yeah.
so what you're saying is that when you're going on that first trip, so on the first trip,
Hmm.
if you were going on a vacation to a
Yeah.
place, you would do the, $500 a night hotel room or whatever. But while you're there during the $500 night stay, that's when you connect with expat groups probably beforehand and see if you can connect with people who are there and say, this is where I'm interested. This is what I'm interested in doing. Is that right?
Yes, definitely do that. And then the other thing you can do, which I've done, and I've got one coming up in 2 days, I'm going to go meet an expat group here and talk to people in person because, that's how you're really going to forge friendships. And you need those allies.
Right. So why would you need, why do you need it? You can't just go in cold. Why do you need
Well,
the allies?
okay, you can go in cold, but say, for example, the allies are good because a lot of them have been living here for a while, wherever you are. They
Hmm.
know stuff that you don't.
Hmm.
And so, if you have trouble with like the most basic things, electricity, your Wi-Fi, if you have a problem, you get sick, any of this stuff, if you have a friend that speaks English. Now, it is different. So, like if you were with the partner, that would help. When you're on your own, which a lot of people are more doing and also considering doing,
Right.
you need some allies and you need to have a fallback plan because you're the fallback plan.
Right.
And so, if you have some friends, you want to start making community. Like what I do is I walk around and I talk to business owners and practice my Italian, but now I'm going to meet people in a couple days that actually live here
Right. Expats.
and yeah, and make some connections that way.
So if that's what would you say you should connect? So what about going online first? I mean, going to
Great.
those groups, and you're saying earlier that some of the advice that you get online isn't quite right.
Well, it's not. That's the thing. So when you meet people in person, these are people that are actually here. They're walking around your neighborhood or they're living very close by because they're
Right.
coming to the meetup. I mean, I've been posting on this Facebook group for expats for the past couple of weeks with my photos. And what I've discovered is that some people in that group, they don't live here. They're just traveling as a holiday,
Mm.
so they're not going to know things. They're asking me stuff. As,
Well, everybody is
someone,
like so hungry for information, right? It sounds like.
yeah, people are hungry for information, but that's where you can get the wrong information
Mm.
because people are hungry and you're willing to believe. So that's the thing. When you go and you meet local people that are living here, people that have come as an expat, you're going to get a pretty good cross section
Mm.
to what it's really like. So like, okay, so that is related to the vibe of the place,
Right.
which we didn't talk about last time, but before you decide you're going to move somewhere, you really want to check out and see if this vibe is what you like. Like the next place I'm going to be going is a beach town that I go every year, which is completely without any tourists in the winter.
Hmm.
and it's much smaller than here on Sicily. And a lot of things are closed, but I really like it. It's right next to the water. I like the apartment. It's on the top floor. There's so many good things about it. And I've been going every year. I love it. But that might not be what other people would want.
Right. Well, how do
Might
you
want
find out
more
about the vibe of a
action.
place without actually going there? Like, there's no way to really.
There's kind of no way to, you have to go
Hmm.
because if you just go, I mean, I've gone cold into so many situations thinking I'm going to know what it's, you never know what it's like until you get there. And then the other thing is you should go in the crappy seasons
Right.
because you're probably not going to want to go in this summer when there's 10 billion people there and prices
Well,
quadruple.
unless you like that sort of thing.
Unless
Unless
you
you,
like that sort of thing. Yeah. I
there's
mean,
people
but
who
how?
who like that.
Yeah, I guess there are. Okay, that's cool.
Well, it's kind of like if you've never some because especially when it comes to places like the Mediterranean, where you
Yeah.
have this impression, kind of like we talked about last time, this impression of sun and sand and beach and blue waters and things like that, and you don't get that in the off season. Not all the time. You sometimes you get it, but you don't get it all the time. So it's always a good idea. It sounds like what you're saying is that you really need to go.
Oh, you really need to go.
You absolutely need to go. There's no way to know what a place is like unless you're actually there.
You
And
don't. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and you can learn about it online and you can talk
Hmm.
to people online and you can connect with people online, but unless you actually go and experience it, you're not really going to know what it's like.
Well, for example, I was just doing this research about there's a lot of stuff on solo traveling in India if you're a woman. Well, I've done it a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
So I've got a lot of experience. And so I'm looking at all this different stuff, and you can't just say it's totally not safe.
Right.
Like that's, and you
Everyone's erring on
can't
the
say,
side of that. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's totally safe for you to go. No, it isn't, so, I mean, and then I thought, hey, this is something, one of my app issues when I was doing in the iTunes store, this magazine app with all my photography and writing. One was on India, and I just refound it again because I did it for 5 years with
Hmm.
subscribers, and I thought, this is really good because I did this whole thing in India solo. Didn't even really address the issue of the safety thing, which does need to be addressed.
Hmm.
So that's something, I could add to it. But anyway, what I'm saying is the point I'm making just is that if you're not getting the information from somebody that's actually done it, then you still have to have your own opinion about it.
Right.
So that's why you have to go because your opinion's going to be different than somebody else's because you might not, some people go to India and they leave after 5 days. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, I had a
Yeah.
5-year visa. I went 5 times. I mean, I haven't been in several years, but I certainly enjoyed my time there. It's not like going to any other country, though. It's like the mothership of the world. I mean, honestly, it's
You
not
get
for
there's
everybody.
lots of variety there, I'm assuming.
400 religions, and I mean, it's just their languages and probably 300
It's kind of
religions.
overwhelming. You don't really want to go make that your first trip unless you really love to go, unless that's really your best, like where you really want to go.
Don't do what I did. That was one of my first ones alone. Don't do that. But, I got thrown in the deep end and everything worked out fine. And,
Sure.
it was auspicious. I got to see the Dalai Lama in the beginning of that trip with my
Very
son.
nice.
So, what could go wrong?
Everything was downhill from there though, right? No, I'm kidding.
Exactly.
So we're saying do a lot of research ahead of time, but make sure you connect with expats who actually live there at some point, preferably beforehand. Did you connect with them beforehand or did you connect with them when you got there?
I'm going to be connecting. I've been on this Facebook page, just posting pictures and, doing some casual nothing not really making connections. And so I'm
Hmm.
really looking forward to going and talking to people. And, I think you could try to meet people
Hmm.
online before you get there, especially if your time is limited. I mean, I just feel like, oh, I have all the time in the world. Well, I'm almost at the halfway mark being
It goes much
away
faster than you think, right? It goes a lot faster than you think.
so fast, especially when, you're having so much fun and eating great food and everything is slower. It still goes fast.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's important, I think, to make sure that, and we talked about this last time, is make sure it's an extended period. Like you don't just stay somewhere for 2 days and be done, and then you go because you
No.
never get a feeling for the day, for the place beforehand.
I can't even, and then I see that online too, and people are like, "Oh, is 3 days too much to spend in Florence?" No,
You spend a
like
lifetime in Florence and still
a
not see everything.
lifetime. And so, I feel bad for them because I didn't really get it either until I stayed 12 days in Florence in the center, and it was amazing. I was ready to go to Rome after and be there,
Yeah.
but you you can't. And I met people and did tours and I had a wonderful time, but I don't see how you could do that in 2 or 3 days.
Mhm. Yeah. So people don't leave themselves enough time to really get to know a place in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't
So
think people do. That's
if you're one
right.
of those people who does that, then you're never going to get the full benefit.
Well, I think the problem is, okay, it's like Hawaii. People will go for a very short time. And after living in Hawaii and also me going for very short times, like, up to 2 weeks, I didn't really know what it was like at all until I moved there. And then
Hmm.
I lived there for 3 years on three different islands. So you could have, I would have, you'd think, oh, yeah, I know a lot about it. No, you don't really.
It's interesting that you say short period and 2 weeks because people are like, 2 weeks? I can't imagine 2 weeks in Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And that's a minimum really because, there's just you got to slow down and, by the time
Oh yeah,
you've
Hawaiian time is completely different from all other time.
all
At
other
least definitely
time.
not the rest of America time, that's for sure.
Oh, it doesn't even feel like America to me.
It isn't. It
Yeah.
sure, there's American flags, but everything else is completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to resurrect my living in Hawaii guide because I started thinking, that's like moving to another country.
Yeah, it is
And
like
if
moving
you're
to another country.
It really is. It's not like, in fact, the demographic of white is less than Japanese and Filipino.
Hmm. Yeah, I believe that.
Philippines, so they're bigger, and that's what makes it really feel like you're really in a different country. Like it's like you're more in Asia, and I
Yeah,
moved there from Asia, so that was actually a good way to transition back to the US
yeah.
because it didn't feel like it at all.
Yeah. Well, it's like Singapore. I mean, you've been to Singapore, right? Singapore feels
Yeah.
like that sort of entry point to Asia. Like I could spend a long time there and then go to other places in there. So does it make sense to do that sort of thing? Like find an entry point that is kind of
Hmm.
like that place and then get yourself to the next level?
You know what? I like that idea. I think that would be good because,
Mm,
a lot of people talk about going to Singapore, but to me, it didn't feel like Asia to me after being in six other countries, including India and Nepal. I mean,
yeah.
it felt a lot like the United States to me.
Yeah, it was for me it felt like a gateway. It felt like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm getting a taste of Asia, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
actually, even though I'm kind of in Asia,
Yeah.
it feels like an Asianified America or something like that. So
Yes.
it's like a stepping stone to being in the real Asia. Right. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like Hawaii is sort of like a stepping stone to being in Japan or the Philippines because there's so much Japanese culture in Hawaii, right? So you go to Hawaii and it's a stepping stone to Tokyo, and Singapore is like a stepping stone to other places in Asia. So if you're really worried about going to places like that, go to these stepping stones first, get familiarized with those places, and then be a little more adventurous and go to the next thing.
That's an excellent suggestion.
Why, thank you. I have them
Yeah.
every now and then.
Well, I didn't think about that because I did it the other way. And I think you've
You're the
brought up
deep
a
end
real
girl. You're like, "Zoom." I'll go
deep
straight to
end.
the deep end.
And you know what? I don't recommend it. That's why I like your idea because it kind of gets your feet wet. Okay.
But
Because
Europe itself is a stepping stone, right? Because it's kind of different enough,
definitely.
but it's not so different that you'll feel out of place. Although some people may feel, it
Yeah.
depends. Everybody's different, right? I mean, if you're American, if you come from the Midwest or something like that, and you've never traveled anywhere, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I want to go. That's a different story, right?
Yeah, because I I think well, it is pretty easy.
Hmm.
Um, but there's little things that make it easier. Like just this last couple times I was in Paris, I didn't know until these last couple of times that when you enter anywhere public, like a restaurant, you say bonjour.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that then. And they immediately like that. But that's like such a small thing. You
Hmm.
wouldn't know that if you didn't travel a little bit. So I think it's easier, and I think people are more accepting in Europe for sure, in every
Right.
country I've been,
So,
about our idiocy.
well, Americans like talking to people, so we just have to say bonjour instead of hey, how are you?
Yeah, that's right.
Just do that little stretch of French. It's not that difficult to pronounce it properly. Bonjour, bonjour.
Oh my God, I sounded so bad and still do, but they've been nice to me.
So one of the things we talked about is like this kind of travel is not for everyone. How do you know when you're ready to do it?
Mm. Well, it's sort of like having a child. You're kind of not ready ever.
Wait a
I've
minute.
got it,
How can
you know,
what? Okay, so women can figure that out, but what about men? How about
okay. Men
it's
could
like
think that too. Men could think, oh yeah, I could be a
having a kid?
father, and
Yeah.
then
Well,
they
that's true,
find
true,
out
true. It's all about the child, not the actual child bearing. It's about having the child.
it's about
Gotcha.
raising the child. Yeah,
Raising the
not
child. Gotcha.
not just having the baby. No, that's such a
Okay.
small part of it. So, you know how you were when before you had children and you'd hear advice from people that didn't have any?
Yeah, yeah,
You'd be like, what? You don't even know what you're talking about.
yeah.
So
What are you talking about?
it's a little bit similar, this whole traveling thing. So I think what you have to do, okay, for an example, this very successful entrepreneur colleague of mine, she went to Paris by herself and she hated it.
Mm,
She's got plenty of money, could do whatever she wanted. She just really didn't like traveling solo. I mean, it was just a vacation, but I thought it was really interesting that that was her experience, and that's what made me see that it's really not for everybody. How I think, is how obsessed you're going to be with it
mm.
before you get there. So you really have to be obsessed. You have to be, if you're going by yourself, you have to be comfortable with your own company and comfortable going into restaurants by yourself and meeting people. I mean, those are things that are even more intense when you're traveling.
So what would you say was about what was it about her character that made her not like Paris or not like France?
Oh, okay. I tried to think of why. She said she didn't like being alone, and she did have a business where she had, like, I think 15 employees.
Hmm.
So she had a whole staff and she liked having people around her. And so I think maybe
But there's
for
people
her,
around you. You're sitting in a cafe. You're surrounded by people.
yeah,
I would
but
be,
see,
especially in Paris, I wouldn't be surprised if you're surrounded by Americans too. Sorry, go on.
well, yeah, those places, they're not the good ones to go to.
No, no, no. Go on.
Don't ever go to restaurants that are in English, the menu,
Yeah.
never. Those aren't going to be good. But okay, so the
Then
point,
how do I
but
know if
see,
I'm ordering frog's legs?
okay, get your Google Translate
Okay.
out. That's
Gotcha.
going to help. That's going to help. Make sure you're online. Um, Well, she wasn't in charge.
Mm,
She was in an unknown situation where she didn't know the language. And actually, that's a really good point about not knowing the language because if you don't, it's like, okay, I'm walking around every night doing my stroll at sunset, and the background is always Italian. I'm understanding like one word out of every sentence I hear. So that's only like 1%. And so that affects you. Like I love eavesdropping
yeah,
if I
you
hear
have to be comfortable in that kind of environment, right?
right. And so that's what I'm saying. You have to be comfortable in that kind of environment. And a lot of people wouldn't be
Mm.
because you don't know what's going on. And so, and you have to be comfortable with being very awkward about trying out a language that you're learning. And I make mistakes every day.
So you have to be okay with making mistakes. Like you can't be a perfectionist.
You cannot.
It's not, it's not possible.
No. So there's that. So, like, if you're a typical kind of A personality, like she was, now that I
Hmm.
think of it, she was an A personality. What
But
do
there's
you
type
call
A
it?
personalities that are
Type
open,
A.
and there's type A personalities that are more rigid, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, but your point about perfectionism was she kind of was that way to have
mm,
everything be, just the way. Because I actually did do a one trip with her and it had to be her way. We're not, you know, traveling.
well, what I found interesting, like this is so when at first time I went to Greece with my ex, she didn't
Okay.
know any Greek at all, right?
Okay.
And her attitude completely changed when we went to Greece. Like she went from being, the kind of person that she was here, which is a little more outgoing and outrageous, to
Yeah.
very subdued, super, super subdued, right?
Okay.
And everything, because everything had to pipe through me, right? I mean, all the communications have to go through me because I knew how to speak Greek. So I thought that was very interesting. But it sounds like sort of like your open-mindedness is key, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're not open to being in a place or listening to or being surrounded by people that you don't understand and you don't know what's going on, if you're not open to that, or if you can't handle that, then this might not be a good idea, right? Going,
Yes.
but if you do want to do that, you can always go to places where English is the language that's spoken most, right? Which is not that many. There's a few places like that, so you can still do it. You just have reduced the amount of places you can go to like a very small amount.
Well, there's Belize, Mexico,
Yeah,
lots of
there's Belize, there's
places.
Singapore. People speak. There's Hawaii. There's England. There's Canada. Right? There's only so many places where English is spoken. So
You're
that really
right. There's
reduces
not
the
that
amount of
many.
places. Yeah,
You're right.
there's real.
There's not that many.
So you somehow have to kind of get over the fact that you're going to be surrounded by people speaking a foreign language, and you may not be able to understand what's going on.
Well, and there's an emotional reaction to that too. Like just today, I really missed my dog.
Right.
I mean, my son and I share a dog, and I had to look at videos and pictures
You
of her
share a dog?
today.
Do you get
Yeah.
custody some days and he gets custody other days? Is that how it works? Or
Yeah, we really, we end up somehow it works, but he tried to give her to me once, and I thought, "Oh, I don't think I can do 100%, even though
mm,
she really does love being with me.
right.
And she's the most excited of any being in the world about me showing up. She'll do cartwheels and be so jazzed. And it's like, I just love that dog so much. And so I haven't seen her in a whole month and I really missed her today. So I went for a walk and then I felt better. But so I was thinking about in terms of us talking today, the emotional effect of not seeing your family, not seeing people that you really love, not being close enough to just get on a
Yeah.
plane. I mean, you can, of course, but
Yeah.
it's a big deal to get an 11-hour flight and all that stuff.
Well, and corollary to that, it's kind of like you really have to have an interesting combination of aspects to yourself, because on the one hand you have to be an extrovert, but on the other hand you have to be okay with being by yourself. So you have to be able
Right.
to kind of switch roles to, okay, I'm on my own, which is
Hmm.
great, and I'm also surrounded by people who I don't know, which is also great. So
Yeah. Yeah.
having those two things is usually uncommon in a person, right? Because you're either an extrovert or you're an introvert, but you kind of have to be both, and you have to be
You
able to
have
switch
to be
between the
both.
modes. Yeah,
You have to be both. And when you said in our first session, you said you're an extrovert. And then I thought about that and I thought, I'm really both because I can be by myself for long periods of time. And I do enjoy my company. So if
mm,
you're the kind of person that always has to be going somewhere with somebody, you can't do anything, it's probably not going to work.
right. Unless you find somebody right away, like you go to a bar and you start drinking with Giuseppe, who lives
You
there.
could, you
You can make a
could.
friend, you can make a friend just like that. So if you're good at making friends and if you're okay with not knowing the language perfectly, then you could conceivably be like that. But there's still many stretches, especially if you're a solo traveler, where you are alone.
Well, yeah, and I'm a lot more cautious now than I was when I first started
Right.
in terms of where I'll kind of place myself.
Hmm.
Um, because now I want to get 8 hours of sleep. I don't want to stay up until the
You don't want to
bar.
be up drinking with Giuseppe till 3 a.m., 4
I
a.m.
don't. I really don't. I want to get my sleep.
Okay, Giuseppe, it's time for bed.
I gotta
No, no,
go.
one more drink, one more drink.
And so, it's so, and then that's why you want to meet people that
Right.
actually live here
Hmm.
and not just because when I was first, out of my 20-year marriage, I didn't know, I'd meet my friends at bars and stuff. That's not really the best way to meet people, but it could be here because it's a different kind of cultural thing
Hmm.
to have a glass of wine. And, it's really funny. I don't see people over drinking here.
Right.
It's just not a
Something about the
thing.
booze there. It's not as alcoholic.
It's not as alcoholic. No, that's really true, Chris. The alcohol content is lower.
Yep. Yep.
And
But you're
I've
also having
noticed
fun
it.
at the same time. It's not just sitting and drinking. I mean, you're enjoying yourself.
That's true. You're not just sitting there drinking, you're talking to people and stuff. But this is what I want to make a point of.
Okay.
I've gotten more cautious about especially maybe not in Europe, but in like more like third and fourth world countries when people act super friendly and want
There's
to
a
marry
fourth
you.
world?
There is, and
Oh
I've
wow.
been there.
I didn't even realize. I thought it stopped at three.
No,
It goes beyond
uh-uh.
that.
You know what I would call a fourth world country? Nepal.
Okay.
It's not even third.
Wow. I didn't even know.
Oh
So
my
you've had
God.
proposals then. That's happened to you. You've
Oh,
had people have
many.
proposed. Men have
Yeah.
proposed
And
to you.
it's not really flattering. They just want to get out of their country. That's all. They just see you as a walking passport.
Yeah.
So, that has
But
made
that
me get
happens everywhere. I know a
cautious.
guy who went through that in France. He met a woman in Paris,
Okay.
and same deal. And he married her, brought her back to the States, and they had a kid. And then 5 minutes later, she was back to Paris with her
Wow.
with her American citizenship. So
Interesting.
it
Okay. I've
happens
never heard
everywhere.
that.
Another
Okay.
thing you got to worry about, right? It's like that's the
I've
thing.
actually never heard the
Americans,
reverse.
yeah,
Tell me.
Americans are. I think we are kind of targets in that way. Like for people who want to leave, especially when you go, like you said, when you go to the third and fourth world countries, they look at you and they find out you're an American. Then it's like, okay, everything changes, right? Their attitude towards you changes completely. Is that
Everything
something that's
changes.
something to worry about, right?
Well, you should be cautious because, I told you I spent a lot of time in India and that happened a lot there.
Right.
So there'd be like people from England, women from England, some USA, mainly the first world
Mm. Well, that
countries.
happens in
And
Greece too. There's actually a term
okay,
for it. There's a term
what
for it
is
for
it?
guys. So guys looking for women who are traveling, solo travelers, and it's called kamaki, which means harpooning. Like
Harpooning! Oh my God, that is funny. Oh
so
my
they look
God.
out for foreign women, and
Yeah.
it's actually there was a movie. You remember Shirley Valentine? You saw that movie? Did you
Yes,
ever see that movie? Yeah,
I
it's
did, but
basically
I
just like that.
forgot.
It's basically like that. So the single woman comes to Greece. They wine them and dine them and they romance them, and then they know they're going back, so they don't have to worry about it. But in some cases, they're actually doing it so they can get themselves out of the country. And I'm sure that's the same. It's a very common concept around the world because
That's right.
so the question there is then should you
Okay.
not represent yourself as an American? Should you say that you're from Canada or some other place where it's not as I mean, do you put a target on your back if you say you're American?
You know, I don't say I'm from somewhere else just because I'm
But
not.
they'll eventually get to that point when you're in the
And
conversation, right?
and they're gonna know. So to me, that's almost an intimate detail.
Right.
And most people can tell when they look at me. Like
Hmm.
if I've been in Europe for a while, sometimes I'm mistaken for a European, but
Hmm.
usually they know that I'm from the United States when they see me coming before I even open my mouth. They've
Right.
got some kind of radar. I don't know.
You got the American look to you.
I mean, what is that? Okay. But so I just feel like there's other things to look for and to be sensitive about that because it's happened so many times. I know what's coming before.
Mm. So
So I
you
don't,
have to be on the guard then, basically.
yeah,
So you have
you
to be.
do.
This is great. It's like you have to be extrovert, you have to be an introvert, you have to be on guard, you have to be unguarded, unguarded. It's like
Yep. Yeah. All of it.
there's a lot of work involved here. I thought this was going to be fun. Come
Well,
on,
see,
you're the CEO of fun.
that's why I wanted to talk about the stuff that nobody will tell you because I don't want people to get the idea that oh this is so easy and fast and there's no work to it. Like
Yep.
it's not going to work for a lot of people that just what we just said. It's not going to work for people and they're going to go back because
But
bureaucracy, they don't know the language or something like that. Although
there's
you
I
never
mean,
hear from those people.
no, no. But there's an upside. I mean, the thing is that there's an upside too. There's an amazing upside, but people have to get through these barriers to get to that amazing upside. And so it's not going to be 100% easy all the time, but if you're prepared for it and you can work with the barrier and get through the barrier, then it's so much better on the other side.
Right. I mean, people say, oh, I would never go back to the United States that are traveling like this. And then there's
Yeah.
people that go back because they either need to access health care and they can't get it where they are in the country, or something with their family. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
you
I
never
think those
know.
actually you touched on those two things are very important because you were talking about your dog earlier. And so like being away from family, that's a big deal for a lot of people. So I think that's something that people have to think about that, you're going to be spending a long time away from your family. Are you going to be prepared for that? Are you going to be okay with that? Can you talk to them over FaceTime or whatever, and will that be good enough for you? Right?
Yeah. And that's something you won't know until you do it because there's something too that happens where they kind of don't stay in touch as much.
Mm.
I don't know what it is.
Mom's not here, so we're not going to call her or talk to her anymore.
I mean, he called
She's
me on his
busy having fun.
birthday. Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. I'm like, oh, okay. Now my sister calls, but less than usual. And then
Right.
I have a friend, and it's about the same, but a little bit less. And so I was thinking, huh,
Because they know you're in Italy, so they don't call you. Is that right?
yeah. I think they think, oh, she's having fun. I don't want
She's
to
having too
bother.
much fun. So I
And
don't
it
want to,
might be too much.
she's having too much fun, so I don't want to bug her. It's like this is like my mom. I would say to her, she goes, "Where should I call you?" I said, "Just call my cell phone. Wherever I am in the world, I will pick it up when I see you're
Okay.
calling." And
All
she still
right.
calls my home phone. I could be in Greece, I could be somewhere else, but she would still call my home phone. I'm like, this is back when I had a home phone, but it's kind of like, call me anytime you want. I'm going. It doesn't matter where I am. Just give me a call. And I think you're right. People will hesitate to call you when you're away from home for some strange reason because
I'm still trying to figure it out.
so what do you do? There's no way around that, right? You just have to you have to do the outreach then as the traveler.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you're going to be doing more outreach. And then the other thing you can decide to do is, okay, I'm not going to feel bad about this. I'm just going to go take a walk or go talk to some people down the street and practice
Yeah.
my Italian. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to decide because you won't always get them either.
Yeah.
Time zone difference,
Yeah. So you
maybe.
gotta you gotta work at this. It's not easy all the time. You gotta work it. You gotta spend some time working at it. It's not
It's
just
work.
yeah.
I mean,
And then
it's fun work, but that's why we're talking about it.
yeah. And then the other thing you were talking about was healthcare, which of course is a
Yeah,
huge
huge.
hairy mess that we probably need to get into in more depth. But when you're talking about healthcare, you say, what is like the surface thing that you have to concern yourself with? I mean, do you have to make sure that, especially if you're going to be somewhere for a month or something like that,
Okay.
what do you have to
Well,
do?
okay, there's a lot of different options, but I just found out that if it's an emergency in Italy, you don't have to pay.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
didn't
in
know
fact, I
that.
think it's like that in a lot of countries, actually. It's the same in Greece. It's the same in a lot of countries where emergency care is covered, but anything beyond that,
That's that's not what our country does,
no.
where we live. So there's
But
that. And
we're
then,
very different from every other place in the world.
oh my God. Yeah, we should take a look at that. Um, so I get now,
We like
okay, so
standing out on our own.
yeah, with nothing.
That's
Right.
us.
Mm.
That's America.
So
Any wonder
individual.
people want to leave. Any wonder people want to travel and go to other places and be digital nomads elsewhere in the world. And wonder why, right? But yeah,
Oh,
so what do you have to do? You have to basically so in most places you just have to check ahead of time to make sure that if like here are the options, here are your options. And is it helpful to have some kind of health insurance, additional travel insurance and stuff like that?
well, a lot of people recommend that. I, however, don't do it because I've figured out the cost for me if something happens. It's not like the United States where you're going to have to. Now, I've heard horror stories. I heard a horror story about Mexico.
Hmm.
Being charged $1 billion. But I've actually
Wow.
gotten medical care, not emergency, not, my spine cracking or something, like this guy was talking about. But
Yikes.
it is, there's a risk and stuff, but um I think you have to be super careful about keeping yourself healthy when you're here
Mm.
and when you're away.
It's
And then
easier to
there
keep yourself healthy when you're away, though, isn't it?
it
Because I
really
mean,
is. Like,
in the
look at my
States, we get
fingernails,
in
how
our
good they
cars
look.
and we drive to the gas station. We get in our
Yeah,
cars and we drive
yeah,
everywhere. And in Europe
everywhere.
or in other places, you get out, you leave your apartment and you walk everywhere.
Yeah,
It's so much help, and the food is so much better. The food is better, the exercise is better. It's so much easier to be healthy outside of this country than it is to be healthy inside of this country.
it's so much easier
Yeah.
and less expensive too.
Yeah. So your health actually will improve just by leaving the country and going
Yeah,
to live somewhere else.
mine is. I feel like I have more energy. I'm eating better. I'm not driving at all. So
Hmm.
you're taking away a lot of the risks. And then if you feel better getting extra insurance, go ahead. But I started to look into it and it's like at my age, I'm 68, then they start acting like you're half dead. So you got to pay 10 times more because you might get in trouble. And it's like, I'm not playing your game.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
exactly.
for example, I went to the dentist to get my teeth cleaned here. They said it was 80 euros, and I said, I bargained for everything. I said, would you do a cash discount? Drop to 60 euros. I'm like,
Nice.
okay,
Nice.
great.
Well, that works
Here,
here too.
yeah. And so, I didn't think that was bad. I mean, you pay around that in Mexico for a teeth cleaning. So it's more upkeep that I do without, getting surgery or any of that stuff. So so that's a very personal decision. So
Right.
you can get more insurance.
If you're worried about that sort of thing.
If you're
If you're
worried
worried about
about
it.
it,
Yeah.
you should probably do it. But, in Europe, you're not going to pay much
Right.
if something goes wrong, unless it was something horrible. But then if it was an emergency, like I didn't know that until this trip, that
Yeah.
they don't charge you.
No, it happened to my a friend of mine who was a Canadian friend, and he had an episode. I think it was a heart attack or a stroke or something like that in one of these
Wow.
islands in Greece. And they lifted him by chopper. They took him to Athens, and they treated
Wow.
him, and it didn't cost anything. So the
Oh my
emergency
God.
treatment was completely free.
And
And
that guy would have been bankrupt
oh
in the United States or
yeah, let's not
Canada.
talk about what happened here.
Oh God.
So we've got you gotta work at it. You gotta be extroverted, you gotta be introverted, you have to be able to swing back and forth, you have to be able to be open-minded. What else do you need to be?
Um, okay, so there's the money thing. There's a couple of things I didn't say last time, which was if you're going to be gone for a while, you should really have some money put aside for coming back and visiting the US or Canada or wherever you're from, because that adds up.
What do you mean
So,
visiting people who you miss, that sort of thing.
yeah.
Right.
So like one time in Thailand, I was crying over my soup or something, and this Thai lady's like, because I miss my son, and she's like, "Oh, just go back, visit them, and come back." I'm like, "Oh yeah,
Oh yeah, no
it's
problem. I'll
only a
just jump on my
20 hour."
bike. Here I go.
Yeah, and I just thought she's right. However, um, that's gonna be $1,200. I mean,
Yeah. You have
you
to
should
understand that you'll be
plan.
away from your family. You'll be away from your family, you'll be away from your friends, and that might be the toughest thing to get over, right?
It's a big thing. I mean, I've done it. The longest I've done it was 18 months.
Mm,
And and I didn't actually even go. Did I go back? No, I didn't. I moved to Hawaii after the 18 months.
right.
And so I didn't see people for a long time.
Except a
Um
native Hawaiians that you were hanging out with. You didn't see anybody you knew. You didn't see you were
yeah.
obviously surrounded by Hawaiians.
Oh yeah. Well, there's very few of them left. Um
Well, native Hawaiians, no, maybe, but I mean Hawaiians who lived there,
yeah,
you were still, doing your thing. Like I can't imagine living in Hawaii that long. I mean, I've heard that there's what is it called? Island madness or something like that, where
I
you're
never had island fever. I never had
island
it.
fever. That's right. Where people move to Hawaii, they think, "Oh my God, we're going to have this great new life in Hawaii." And then after about 3 months, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did this." Because they're
But
like,
you just
and
go to
they
another island.
get sucked back to the mainland.
I never felt that. I thought it was
Well, I mean,
great.
it is so idyllic. It's just incredible. But it is remote from the rest of the
Yeah,
world, right? I mean, it's the
it's the
most remote.
furthest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most remote place to live in the world. But I know it's beautiful. I can see how people get to the point where they're, oh my God, I feel like I'm disconnected from everybody. But that's only because if they still have family and friends that they want to connect with, right?
Well, that's the thing. But the funny thing is, during the 3 years of living there, I felt less connected on other not being in Hawaii to my
Mm,
family and friends, because I
interesting.
think there was the connection of, oh, I'm speaking English, and this supposedly is the United States.
Yeah.
So there was that. And so the speaking English thing was huge because after 18 months in Asia, I was really tired of not speaking English. Because, I say some funny things sometimes and I like it when people laugh. And the only thing people were laughing about was how I would try to speak the language. And I thought, that gets old.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
That's
like we're
interesting you should
not.
mention that because it's kind of like long term, for really long term living somewhere, it's very difficult to live somewhere that's not English speaking, right? Because you lived in Hawaii for 3 years. You could probably live in London for 5 years or something like that, but or maybe even Singapore. But if you went to countries that were not English speaking, it gets old after a while, right? It's tough to be there for too long.
It's tough. And that's why when people go, oh, I don't want to live in a village in Italy overrun with expats, it's like, you're going to want to speak English to
Yeah.
somebody. I mean, I know it's ridiculous. Like, it's kind of ridiculous in Puerto Vallarta. Like, there's so many expats there, you don't sometimes feel like you're in
Oh yeah.
Mexico.
I remember we went into a bar in Puerto Vallarta once,
Yeah.
and everybody behind the bar was speaking English, and I'm like, "What's going
Yeah.
on here?" And this is when I was there from Canada, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this place is run by Canadians." I'm like, "Seriously?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I,
And it's like we spent the entire evening talking to them, of course in English, but they were
mhm.
like they had come down from Canada like 10 years ago and opened up this bar, and it was
Yeah.
full of expats. I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm not even in Mexico."
Yeah. So that kind of full of expats, no, I'm not into that. And I tried it for 4 months.
But you know what? For others, it might actually be a good thing being
Yeah.
surrounded by expats because it'll make you feel more comfortable. So if you go to some remote village in Italy, which is full of expats, then it's almost like being in Italy, but at the same time, you get the benefit of being able to speak English.
Yeah. And so, that's why you have to really go to these places because there's some villages and cities that people don't speak English.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that's not going to work for you unless you know. I mean, you do, if you want to be in Italy, you do have to know Italian.
How hard is it to learn another language? I mean, really, that's that's the $64,000 question, right? I mean, everybody learns at different rates. And how long would it take for you to say learn Italian passably?
I think if now I get distracted easily because I've got a lot of other things to do, but that's my excuse. But I think if I committed, I could learn a lot in a month if I
Hmm.
committed to doing it every single day and
Yeah.
practicing. Because, like,
Yeah.
now I'm starting to hear some words that I'm like, oh, I'm like every time I come, I know a little bit more, but I can't really have conversations.
Yeah.
I
Well,
still need
it
Google
helps to be
Translate.
immersed in it. If you're immersed in it like that and you work on it at the same time, then
Yeah,
conceivably you could get up to speed in about a month. Like you said, in about a month.
I think you could.
Mm,
Definitely. Because,
that would
oh,
really
the
help
other
you.
thing too is that people are very nice here about it and they will help you.
Mm,
That's not what you'll find everywhere.
yeah.
Like, they
I
don't
found that
mind
too.
some, right?
Yeah. When I was talking to we were in a shop in Greece, the religious ornament shop or something like that, and the woman said, "Oh, I have an uncle who speaks Greek just like you. He lives in California as well, and he says everything topsy-turvy, like just like you." And I'm like, "Geez, I thought I was actually pretty good at it."
That's
She
funny.
put me in my place, I tell you.
Oh, I say topsy turvy every single day. I might say it for days at a time and then finally found out it was topsy turvy. I mean,
No,
but they understand.
there's a word in Greek, basta, which means
What
like tale basta. You're speaking it incorrectly or like way off, right? And I'm like, is that really bad? Is she like insulting me or is she just like joking around?
she's probably joking.
Yeah, probably. I hope. If she wants me to buy these things, or she better be
Yeah.
joking.
Yeah, there is some goodwill there with the buying. That's why it's good to talk to owners in the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, well, I think we covered a lot of things today, but is there anything else that we're missing? Well, obviously we can have it in a future show, but we're almost at time. So, is there anything else that we're missing that's big that we should probably cover?
Mm, Oh, the only thing we didn't say was that's kind of big is when something goes wrong.
Yeah,
Just
we should,
about.
that's a whole show.
That's
That's a
enough.
whole show.
You're right.
That's
You're
a
right.
whole show unto itself.
You're right.
But
That is the whole
the thing
show.
is, we don't want to dissuade anybody from this. We don't want
That's
to stop
true.
people from doing this, right? I mean, there's so many people who are aspiring to do this, and yeah, there's obviously things that you have to worry about, but they're all barriers that can be overcome, right?
That's true. That's
Yeah,
absolutely true. And you'll have the time of your life. It's just, to prepare, and you'll find when you get here or wherever you're going that it's going to be an adventure and it's going to enhance your life big time.
yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is that we want to make sure that people are going into this with their eyes wide open, because a lot of people are just like they jump in like you did at the deep end, and now you're looking back on it and going, I wish I would have known this, and I wish I would have known that. And that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
do here, right? We're trying to give people a heads up that, hey, there's things you got to think about, but on the other side of those things, it's amazing.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes. Just do it. Do your research and then still do it. Don't decide not to do it because you're never really going to know unless you're in that country experiencing it firsthand.
Exactly. That's the important thing. Just do it.
Just do it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been great. We'll talk again next time.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
Thanks,
Have a good one.
Chris. You
Bye-bye.
too.
Oh, I'm living that nomad life, city to city, feeling alive. From mountain tops to ocean drives, unchained, I thrive, I thrive. Oh, I thrive, I thrive.